Title: The Shadows of Trust. James had always prided himself on being a good man, a faithful husband, a devoted father, a reliable friend. His life was built on trust, until the night it all crumbled beneath him. It started with something small, a whisper of doubt, a fleeting glance from his wife, Emily, that lingered a second too long. A late-night phone call she quickly dismissed as just work. He tried to ignore it, to rationalize. After all, they had been together for nearly 15 years. Why would she lie now? But then came the text message. James wasn't the type to check Emily's phone, but that night, when she left it on the nightstand and stepped into the shower, the screen lit up. Unknown number ****, I can't stop thinking about last night. When can we meet again? ***. His blood ran cold. He stared at the message, his heart hammering against his ribs. His first instinct was denial. Maybe it was a wrong number. Maybe it was a misunderstanding. But deep down, in that place he didn't want to acknowledge, he knew better. Emily came back into the room, towel wrapped around her hair, humming softly. James quickly put the phone down and forced a smile. He couldn't confront her. Not yet. He needed proof. He needed to know if the life he had built was nothing more than a carefully crafted illusion. So he did what he never thought he would do. He followed her. The next evening, when Emily said she had a work dinner, James didn't go home. Instead, he parked his car a block away from the restaurant she had mentioned and waited. An hour passed. 2. Then he saw her. She wasn't alone. The man was younger, taller, confident in the way he leaned in, whispering something in her ear that made her laugh. James gripped the steering wheel so tightly his knuckles turned white. Every fiber of his being screamed at him to storm inside, to demand answers, to tear the stranger away from his wife. But instead, he waited. He watched as they left together, as they walked down the dimly lit street, as they turned the corner toward a hotel. James sat there for what felt like an eternity, staring at the empty street. His world had just shattered, but the rage he expected didn't come. Instead, there was something colder, sharper, a determination to know the truth, the full truth, before he decided what came next. The next morning, Emily kissed him as if nothing had happened, as if she hadn't spent the night in another man's arms. James kissed her back, his expression unreadable. But this wasn't over. Not by a long shot. Over the next few weeks, James became obsessed. He started watching Emily closely, noting every little detail. How she held her phone closer than usual. How she smiled to herself while typing. How she started wearing perfume even when she wasn't going out. The woman he had trusted with his heart had become a stranger to him. He hired a private investigator. It felt like something out of a bad movie, something only desperate men did. But James was desperate. He needed facts, hard proof, not just a text message or a glimpse through a car window. And what he found was worse than he had imagined. The investigator handed him a file, thick with photographs. Emily, dressed in things she never wore around him. Tight dresses, high heels, stockings that left little to the imagination. The man? A well-known businessman. Rich, powerful. Someone James had met once at a fundraiser, shaking hands, pretending to be impressed. But that wasn't what made James' stomach twist into knots. No, it was the details. The hotel wasn't just any hotel. It was the same one where they had spent their honeymoon. The man wasn't just a fling. He was someone who had been in Emily's life for years, lurking just beneath the surface. And then there were the gifts, expensive jewelry, silk lingerie that James had never seen before. James felt sick. But the worst part? He wasn't even angry anymore. He was intrigued. He started watching them. Not just through the investigator's reports, but in real time. He followed Emily to her rendezvous, sat in bars across the street, observed the way she moved, the way she became someone else when she was with him. It was like watching a performance, a version of his wife he had never known existed. And then an idea formed in his mind. What if he confronted them, but not in the way they expected? What if, instead of rage, he leaned into the game, played along, learned exactly what made Emily tick, what she craved that he had never given her? What if he turned the tables? James started changing. He stopped waiting for answers and started seeking them in his own way. He became more attentive, more dangerous in his own quiet manner. He dressed differently, spoke differently, touched Emily in ways he hadn't in years. Teasing, deliberate, withholding just enough to make her wonder. And Emily noticed. She started watching him now, uncertain, curious, as if she could sense the shift but couldn't quite place it. She would reach for his hand at dinner, ask if something was wrong, if work was stressing him out. James would only smile. Then, one night, he made his move. He booked a room, the same hotel, the same suite, and he sent Emily a message from an unknown number. "I know what you've been doing, but tonight, I want to show you something new." He sat on the edge of the hotel bed, waiting, sipping a glass of whiskey as the minutes passed. And then, at exactly the time he expected, the door handle turned. Emily walked in, her breath hitching as she saw him there. James leaned back, watching her, enjoying the confusion in her eyes. He gestured to the seat across from him. "Sit. Let's talk." For the first time in their marriage, Emily didn't know what to say. To be continued. The game begins. James was no longer just a husband betrayed. He was an observer, a strategist. He watched Emily more carefully than ever, studying every move she made, every flicker of hesitation in her eyes. He wasn't going to act recklessly. No, this required patience. One evening, after Emily had gone to bed, James sat in his office, staring at the file the private investigator had given him. The pictures were burned into his mind. Emily with another man, laughing, whispering, touching. It should have filled him with rage, but instead he felt something else. Curiosity. What did this man give her that he didn't? What was she looking for? The way she dressed around him, the way she looked at him, it was different. James realized he didn't just want to confront her. He wanted to understand her. The next morning, James changed his approach. Instead of silent resentment, he became attentive. He complimented Emily more, touched her more often, studied her reactions. He started dressing sharper, carrying himself with a confidence he hadn't bothered with in years. And it worked. Emily began noticing. She became hesitant, watching him when she thought he wasn't looking. One night, as they lay in bed, she finally asked, "Is everything okay? You seem different." James turned to her, smiling slightly. "I've just been thinking a lot lately. About us. About what we want." Emily's breath hitched. She opened her mouth to say something, but then stopped herself. James reached out, tracing his fingers down her arm. "You know, I don't think I ever really saw you before." Her eyes flickered with something. Nervousness? Excitement? The next day he made his move. He booked a room at the same hotel where she had been meeting her lover. Sent her a message from an unknown number. "I know what you've been doing, but tonight, let's change the rules." Emily hesitated when she entered the room. She had expected someone else, maybe even feared being caught. But when she saw James sitting in the chair, sipping whiskey, waiting, her face drained of color, he gestured to the seat across from him. "Sit. Let's talk." For the first time, she had no idea what to say. James leaned forward, his voice low. "You've been playing a dangerous game, Emily. But now it's my turn.